From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. assured the public that government operations will remain fully active despite the ongoing national energy emergency. In his weekly vlog released Sunday, the president said the administration cannot afford to slow down as the country faces external pressures on fuel supply and prices brought about by the crisis in the Middle East. President Marcos emphasized that essential services, including infrastructure, healthcare, education, tourism, culture, and support for athletes, will continue without disruption. He reiterated that public service must not be paralyzed by any challenge. As part of efforts to highlight ongoing programs, the President showcased the government's flagship housing initiative, the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino program, or 4PH, which aims to ease the country's long-standing housing backlog. On Thursday, President Marcos visited the Palayan City Township project in Nueva Ecija Province, where several residential buildings under the program have already been completed and are now occupied. The 23-hectare development is designed to accommodate more than 22,000 beneficiaries once fully built, offering vertical housing units alongside community amenities. The chief executive said the housing program demonstrates how government continues to deliver services that provide stability and hope to Filipino families even in the midst of an energy crisis.
Alam niyo po, kahit mabigat ang krisis natin sa enerhiya, ang trabaho ng gobyerno ay hindi maaaring doon lang tumigil. Patuloy ang paggawa ng mga kalye at daan, patuloy ang pangangalaga sa mga may sakit, sa mga estudyante. Hindi pwedeng huminto ang pagpuksa sa krimen. Hindi rin pwedeng tumigil ang pagsuporta sa ating mga atleta, sa kultura, sa sining, sa turismo. Patuloy ang trabaho sa lahat ng sangay ng gobyerno. At yan naman talaga ang dapat dahil hindi natin hahayaang maparalisa ang serbisyong binibigay ng gobyerno. Ano man ang problemang hinaharap. Kaya't hayaan niyo pong ikwento namin sa inyo, simula po sa vlog na ito, ang mga mahalagang programa ng pamahalaan na kahit sa gitna ng krisis ay nakakapagdala ng magandang pagbabago sa buhay ng ating mga kababayan. Tignan natin ang kwento naman ng pamilyang mga matagumpay na iniahon ng ating mga programang pabahay.
Sa loob ng maraming taon, libu-libong pamilyang Pilipino ang walang maayos na tirahan. Hirap makakuha ng pabahay. Kung meron man, hindi angkop sa disenteng pamumuhay.
Iisa ang pangarap ng bawat pamilya, ang magkaroon ng sariling tahanan. Ang mga pangarap nyo, ang pangarap din ng Pangulo. Kaya agad inilunsad ni Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. ang Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino Program o 4PH. Hindi lang para magtayo ng mga bahay, kundi para ibalik ang pag-asa at dignidad ng bawat pamilyang Pilipino.
Noong nakaraang linggo, binalikan ng Pangulo ang ilan sa mga housing projects sa Pampanga para tiyakin na ang bawat pamilya may tunay na pagkakataong magkaroon ng sariling tirahan at ang bawat tahanan ligtas at dekalidad.
Nakakatuwa makita mo na mas maginhawa at mas maganda ang buhay ng ating mga kababayan.
Dagdag pa ni Secretary Jose Ramon Aliling ng Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development.
Ngayon, lahat po ng modalities, nandiyan po yung horizontal, house and lot. Ang dignidad ng pamilya ay, lalo na ang Pilipinong pamilya, ay pag nagkaroon siya ng sarili niyang bahay.
Kwento ng mga residente, dahil sa mababang interes sa pabahay, naging mas abot kaya ito para sa kanila. Ibinaba kasi ng gobyerno sa 1 to 3% ang subsidized interest rate para sa mga kwalipikadong benepisyaryo ng socialized housing project, aninsunod pa rin sa utos ng Pangulo.
Yung mga kulang na bahay ay kagawa natin ng paraan upang lahat ng nangangailangan ng pabahay ay gagawin natin.
Just heard the latest vlog of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is reinforcing the administration's dual priorities of economic protection and governance accountability, rolling out coordinated measures last week to shield Filipinos from global pressures while intensifying anti-corruption and peace-building efforts. The President's engagements highlighted a unified strategy covering economic stabilization, social protection, legal enforcement, and national security. President Marcos on April 21st convened the 4th Unified Package for Livelihoods, Industry, Food, and Transport, or Uplift Committee meeting to assess government interventions against inflation and global oil volatility. Officials reported a whole-of-government response focused on stabilizing prices, securing energy supply, and sustaining livelihood support for vulnerable sectors. More than 24,000 overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, have received assistance, with thousands repatriated amid tensions in the Middle East. Energy officials also reported millions of barrels of oil secured, enough to maintain a buffer supply lasting more than 50 days. Over 977,000 public utility vehicles, or PUVs, have benefited from fuel subsidies and transport assistance. A day earlier, the President inspected the service contracting program at the Araneta Center bus terminal in Cubao. The program provides per-kilometer subsidies to ensure continuous transport operations despite rising fuel costs. President Marcos ordered agencies to accelerate financial aid for transport workers and maintain uninterrupted mobility services. Government efforts to stabilize food and energy prices also continued, with 1,471 megawatts of renewable energy projects being fast-tracked, strict price monitoring in place, and a price freeze on basic goods extended. Subsidized rice distribution and expanded flexible work arrangements across agencies were likewise reported. On April 23rd, the President distributed rice subsidies to small-scale vendors in Palayan City and inspected Kadiwa ng Pangulo outlets offering affordable produce. He also met with village officials and assured continued support for community development and education programs. The following day, in Batangas City, President Marcos led the rollout of the Bawat Bayan Makikinabang program, distributing rice and financial aid to thousands of residents. Local governments received funding for infrastructure, livelihood, and educational assistance. The administration also moved to strengthen legal accountability. On April 20th, President Marcos directed intensified efforts to bring back former Ako Bicol Representative Zaldico, linked to an alleged multi-billion peso flood control scandal. A high-level team was deployed to Prague to coordinate his repatriation after Czech authorities took him into custody. National security leadership also shifted this week. President Marcos swore in former Armed Forces Chief Eduardo Oban Jr. as National Security Advisor, replacing Eduardo Año. The President also appointed former Interior Secretary Mel Senen Sarmiento as Presidential Advisor on Peace, Reconciliation, and Unity, signaling a stronger civilian-led approach to peace-building ahead of the Bangsamoro parliamentary elections. On the diplomatic front, President Marcos held a phone call with Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul on April 21st, reaffirming cooperation on energy and food security and underscoring Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN unity amid regional uncertainties. The chief executive also inspected completed residential buildings at the 23-hectare Palayan City Township under the Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino program or 4PH. Several units are already occupied, with the project expected to house more than 22,000 beneficiaries once fully completed. President Marcos capped the week by joining thousands of devotees in Pangasinan Province for the centennial canonical coronation of Our Lady of the Rosary of Manaoag, calling for unity, compassion, and continued service to communities. Malacañang said the week's activities form part of a broader strategy to protect Filipinos from external shocks while strengthening governance systems and ensuring a stable, responsive, and inclusive economic environment.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang said the government will exhaust all legal avenues to secure the return of former Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldico to the Philippines. Speaking to reporters during a government aid distribution event in Batangas City, Executive Secretary Ralph Recto said the case is being handled directly by the Department of Justice or DOJ. He noted that Justice Secretary Frederick Vida is expected to provide clearer updates once he returns to Manila. Ko is considered a fugitive as he faces charges linked to alleged irregularities in flood control projects. The DOJ earlier clarified that the term arrest may not strictly apply to the actions taken by Czech authorities, saying Ko's case involved immigration issues after he failed to present proper travel documents. Justice Secretary Vida and his team have flown to Prague to coordinate with Czech officials and work on Ko's repatriation.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and First Lady Luis Araneta Marcos will undertake a state visit to Japan from the 26th to the 29th of May, following an invitation from the Japanese government. During the visit, the President and First Lady will be received by Their Majesties, the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the Imperial Palace for a welcome ceremony, a state call, and a state banquet. President Marcos is also set to hold a summit meeting with Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae. The two leaders are expected to discuss the future direction of the Philippines-Japan strengthened strategic partnership and continue their recent exchanges on key international developments, particularly in the areas of energy and food security, as well as maritime security. The President will likewise meet with Japanese business groups and members of the Filipino community as part of his official engagements. The last state visit to Japan by a Philippine president took place in June 2015 under former President Benigno Aquino III. Meanwhile, Their Majesties the Emperor Emeritus Akihito and Empress Emerita Michiko last visited the Philippines in January 2016. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic relations between the Philippines and Japan.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-ILCAC, is urging Filipinos abroad and foreign nationals to stay vigilant against individuals or groups that may be recruiting them into joining armed activities against the Philippine government. The reminder comes after authorities confirmed that 2 American nationals were among those killed in a clash between the military and remnants of the New People's Army, or NPA, in Toboso, Negros Occidental Province on April 19th. NTF-ELCAC Executive Director, Undersecretary Ernesto Torres Jr. said, the deaths of Lyle Prioles and Kai Dana Rene Sorem underscore the growing involvement of foreign individuals in local armed hostilities. Publicly available records indicate Prioles had been affiliated with Anakbayan USA since 2012, an organization that has forked links to the broader communist movement. Both Americans reportedly arrived in the Philippines separately late last month and traveled to Negros Occidental, where they were later killed. Torres extended condolences to their families, noting the difficult circumstances surrounding their deaths far from home. He described the situation as disturbing, citing the presence of foreign nationals in an active combat environment. He urged Filipinos overseas, particularly in the United States, to exercise heightened awareness and sound judgment when engaging with groups whose activities may expose them to significant personal risk. With 19 NPA combatants already identified and returned to their families, Torres said, the focus must now shift to preventing similar incidents. He stressed that the government remains committed to maintaining peace and order, enforcing the law, and safeguarding lives.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, over the weekend reported that 7,674 overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, and dependents have returned to the Philippines since the Middle East crisis erupted nearly 2 months ago. Of this total, 7,051 Filipinos were repatriated through government funding, including 5,669 OFWs and 1,382 dependents as part of sustained efforts to bring home Filipinos affected by the escalating regional conflict. In a statement, the DMW said, the administration continues to strengthen repatriation and reintegration programs in line with the directive of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to ensure the safety of OFWs and support their transition back home. The agency emphasized that government assistance remains available for Filipinos requesting immediate return. The crisis widened after Israel and the United States launched a joint military operation targeting Iran's nuclear facilities and leadership on February 28th, triggering tensions across neighboring Gulf states. Diplomatic efforts are ongoing. DMW Secretary Hans Leo Magpayo earlier assured that the government is prepared for any scenario, including the possibility of a large-scale repatriation. He said the agency has already established meeting points, exit routes, and flyout arrangements to ensure the safe movement of Filipinos who wish to leave affected areas. The DMW is also coordinating with Congress on proposed legislation to create emergency funding mechanisms that would enhance government support for OFWs and their families during international crisis. Magpayo said the agency remains focused on safeguarding Filipino workers, maintaining close coordination with foreign posts, and ensuring that all returning OFWs receive the necessary assistance for reintegration and recovery.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, a warm welcome greeted 112 overseas Filipino workers or OFWs and their dependents as they arrived safely in the Philippines from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. The group, flown in via Emirates flight EK334, was received by Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA Administrator Patricia Yvonne Kaunan, Department of Migrant Workers or DMW Assistant Secretary Francis Ron de Guzman, and OWA Deputy Administrator Ryan Vincent Uy. Personnel from the DMW and the OWA immediately assisted the returning Filipinos, helping them with their luggage and escorting them to the holding area of the Department of Trade and Industry or DTI Philippine Trade Training Center. At the facility, the OFWs and their families were provided meals, special financial assistance, and temporary accommodation while arrangements were made for their domestic flights to the Visayas, Mindanao, and parts of Luzon. For those residing in Metro Manila, Central Luzon, and Calabarzon, OWA arranged land transportation assistance to ensure their safe return home. OWA officials said the operation reflects the government's whole-of-government approach to public service in line with the directive of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to deliver immediate assistance to Filipinos wherever they may be in the world. The agency added that the latest repatriation effort once again demonstrates its commitment to alagang OWA, serbisyong may puso, for the country's modern-day heroes.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration or PAGASA warns that hot and humid conditions will persist across much of the country as easterlies continue to dominate the weather pattern. In its bulletin issued 5 Monday morning, the Weather Bureau said, Sorsogon, Northern Samar, Eastern Samar, Southern Leyte, Dinagat Islands, and Surigao del Norte will experience cloudy skies with scattered rains and thunderstorms due to prevailing easterlies. Metro Manila and the rest of the country can expect partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers or thunderstorms also driven by the same weather system. Heat will remain a major concern. PAGASA forecasts a peak heat index of 45 degrees Celsius in Dumangas, Iloilo, and Giwan, Eastern Samar. Several areas are also expected to reach danger level heat indices, including Sangley Point in Cavite at 44 degrees Celsius, Giwan, Eastern Samar at 43 degrees Celsius, Iloilo City 43 degrees Celsius, La Granja, La Carlota, Negros Occidental 43 degrees, Iba, Zambales 42 degrees Celsius, San Ildefonso, Bulacan 42, San Jose Occidental, Mindoro 42, Puerto Princesa in Palawan 42, and Cuyo also in Palawan at 42 degrees Celsius. PAGASA says the entire archipelago will experience light to moderate east to northeast winds with slight to moderate seas.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our post as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.